welcome to this week's episode. Hope you all enjoyed the last episode. As I said, a little bit touchy because first time ever making a video and obviously a little bit nervous. Hopefully this week it's not so obvious. Really hope you enjoyed the first episode and took some great things from it. In regards to this week's episode, I have had to do a little bit of shuffling. I've had a lot of good feedback for future collaborations that I've wanted to do and kind of bring in. So I've done a little bit of reshuffling, so ignore the last bit of this week's episode. So this week, what we're going to be focusing on is unhelpful thinking styles. Now, these are really, really important because it really sets the basis for how we're going to sort of like deal with a situation that arises and also help us look more at the larger picture than, focus on little minute details that we have a tendency to just draw in on. So we're going to be starting them off. There are a fair few, so I've kind of just narrowed the list down to really just the 5, in my opinion, the ones that really need, in my opinion, not, overall, but in my opinion that you really need to focus on. So we're going to start off with number 5, and that is labeling. Alright, so when we think about labeling, we generally go to the stereotypical ones of, nerd, geek, jock, whore, so to speak. And when we use the terminology, we don't really think about the impact it's having on ourselves. You think times of when you've bumped like a glass off the table or you've dropped something, you thought to yourself, I'm an idiot. And you kind of really generalize that because you've done this, you are an idiot. And you don't really take into account other things that you've done as well. So, think of a time when you've had a party or a celebration and you've invited someone along and they never turned up and they never called to tell you why. And you just think to yourself, well, wow, they're so inconsiderate. How could they? That's so rude. And you just dwell on that negative frame of that person, and you just forever onwards, you just think of that one tiny little situation where they've done that, and you kind of really don't look over them as a whole and think of times where that they have been considerate, or you haven't really dropped a glass all that often. It's been once or twice in 3-4 years, and you just mind frame into that part where you think you're an idiot because you've done that. And the problem is when you define a person by one specific behavior, and it's usually the one that you consider a negative in a situation, you're ignoring the other positive aspects of that person or even yourself. You sit there and you drop the glass, you think, oh, I'm an idiot. But you ignore the fact that you're really good at your job, you can communicate effectively with your friends and can convey messages to them with no problems whatsoever. And you don't tend to put the fact that, you can do these things, which you wouldn't consider an idiot move. And yet you put yourself in that mind frame where you've labeled yourself an idiot and thus you are an idiot. And it's something that, you've got to try and refrain from doing. If you're ever in these situations and, you do something that you feel kind of silly about or stupid for, don't narrow in on that one situation. Just think of something that kind of counteracts it. So, you dropped the glass, but last week you built a shelf, so to speak. Don't focus on the negative. Focus on the overall aspect of the behavior. And you'll find yourself, feeling a lot better about the world around you. And that moves us on to number 4, which is personalization. So personalization is essentially taking something and putting it on yourself. And it's a really big one for me, particularly when I finally made it back to work after my breakdown last year. I found myself, while at work, blaming myself and taking responsibility for things that weren't really my fault to begin with. And it's something that, I'm still working on myself, and it's tough. So, think of a time something hasn't exactly gone to plan or as expected. So, example, you're making your morning toast and you burn it. And instead of thinking to yourself that maybe the toaster setting wasn't right, maybe the toaster is a little bit older and breaking down, you blame yourself. And without realizing, you kind of relate external negative things to yourself. And it may be something that may or may not involve you or even be your fault, but it's still something you take on. And when you personalize something, you take responsibility for external events and factors that may or may not have involved you, you kind of start constantly doing it. And eventually you start taking on the weight of the world. And you imagine putting everyone's mistakes on you. You imagine how carrying 100% of the responsibility is going to feel. And it's you're going to feel overburdened. You're going to feel overwhelmed. And really, when these kind of things happen and something goes wrong, and you find yourself being someone who just goes, oh, that's my fault. I'm sorry, guys. Sorry. Even if you bump into someone and you say sorry all the time, and you think later on, you're like, well, why did I apologize for that? That's personalizing an experience. And it's not good because, as I just stated, you're going to become overburdened, you're going to become overwhelmed, and you're going to take on the responsibility of other people's mistakes. And it's not going to help you. So if you ever find yourself in this situation, instead of just jumping straight away and saying, oh, it's me, it's my fault, I'm sorry, just look at the whole picture overall. Take in all the factors of what happened. So, for example, the toaster. Was the toaster sitting right? Was it too high? How old is the toaster, for example? Find ways that you're not going to centralize the blame fully on yourself and just try and take it into a whole situation and kind of just work it out as to what went wrong. Because when you actually figure out what went wrong in the long run, even if you are responsible, it's not as overburdening as it would be if you just blamed yourself straight away. So which brings us on to number 3, which is disqualifying the positive. So when we talk about disqualifying the positive, what I'm talking about is, think of a time when you've achieved something, you've made it somewhere. So think back to your high school days, and you doing athletics, and you do the 100-meter run, and to yourself, you're not much of a runner. Like myself, I was not much of a runner in high school and primary school. I'm happy to admit that. But think if you were, or even if you weren't, and you decided, well, what the hell, I'll give it a shot. And you run the 100-meter run, and you get through the first round, and the second, and the third, and then you make it to the final, and you come in second. And the first thing you think is, I failed. I screwed up. I didn't achieve. But you made it to the final. Because you've narrowed straight in on that negative, you've kind of just disqualified the steps and achievements you've taken to actually get there. And it's something we all kind of do, and it's a bad habit. And really, if you ever find yourself in these situations where, you've climbed and you've climbed and you've climbed and you've climbed and you've made it to like a really big spot, but then just fallen short, don't disqualify the steps you've taken there. Them in themselves is an amazing achievement. Especially if it's something you've never done before. Don't disqualify what you've done to get there. Enjoy the fact that you got there, and you'll find yourself enjoying the next step and the next thing you try and do. Because if you focus on the actual positivity of what you've done to get there, you'll find the next time you do it, it won't be as hard, and you'll feel better. That's what I think. Which then brings us on to number 2, which is mental filter. So when we talk about mental filter, and pardon me, it's a really, really, really intricate one, because it's one that we don't really notice ourselves doing, and it's very common amongst friends, amongst married couples, dating individuals, people with significant others, and even really pet owners. It can come from anywhere. And to kind of clarify it, imagine yourself, you go out to dinner with friends or a significant other, and you have a really great night, like really good. The food's amazing, the wine pairing or the beer is great, everything's working out perfectly, the scenario's great, the lighting's great, the music's fantastic, the waiter has been fabulous. And then you get to the end of the meal, and you can't decide whether to tip the waiter. And you have a little bit of an argument over it. How much should we tip him? Should we tip him at all? Do they deserve a tip? Well, yeah, they've been great. They deserve one, but why don't you see something that you weren't quite thinking that they deserve a tip off? And you go home. And for the rest of the night, all you think about and all you kind of just narrow in on is that one moment where you had the slightest of disagreements, and you just focus, and that's all you think about. And you completely just filter out all the great things of that night. You filter out the amazing music that went with it. You filtered out the fact that the waiter told an amazing joke. and you just zoom in on that one moment where something slightly negative went wrong, and you find yourself thinking the whole night was terrible. And now when you're thinking about it right now, because a lot of people do, and you think to yourself, you're like, I do that. And just imagine if instead of focusing in on that little negative thing and thinking about the whole night as a whole, how much more you would have enjoyed it and how you actually would have went home feeling great. It's something that we all do without even really noticing. It's kind of a subconscious thing. And if you find yourself in that situation, just, yet again, it all comes back to just stepping back, looking at the whole picture, and just think, was it all that bad? Or was it just this one minor thing that was nothing in the end? And you'll find yourself you had a great time. And you'll find that, days down the line, when you think about it again, it's not going to create a negative feeling. You're going to want to do it again. You're going to be like, hey, that was a great night, let's do it again. And that's what it's all about, really. Just filter out the negative instead of filter in the negative. Which brings us to number 1, and my personal favorite, jumping to conclusions. So, jumping to conclusions. We all do this. It's also referred to as mind reading and future predicaments. And I'm not going to lie, I do this on literally a daily occurrence. I literally will wake up every morning, I'll think to myself, yeah, mother-in-law's going to wake up, make a cup of tea, and then bitch about something that happened the night before. Or sister-in-law's going to wake up and she's going to be in the biggest grumpy mood. She's always grumpy. It's always going to happen. And it's not always the case. And it's this negative build-up and predicaments that can literally impact your entire day. Like if you wake up and the first thing you think is, oh, I'm going to go outside and Susan down the road's going to start yapping my head off and I'm just not going to want to hear it. You're already laying out the precipice for a bad day. And for myself, and for anyone watching, we've got to stop doing that. It's not great. It doesn't help. It sets a really bad precipice for our day and for our week, our month, our year, our decade, our life. While yes, when you know someone, you can tend to predict how they're going to be, but in doing that, you set the precipice that when it does happen, it's just this ball of negative, and you don't think it's ever going to change. And it's something that we've got to stop doing, because really when you expect the unexpected and you don't expect anything, then you're always surprised when something good happens. And if you're not focusing on that negative and not predicting what's going to happen or trying to read someone's mind, for example, like if someone's telling you something and you literally just cut them off and try and finish a sentence and find out you're wrong, that puts a barrier between you and the person you're talking to. Because in their mind, they're just thinking, well, you obviously think you know me, you know what I'm going to say, so why the hell should I talk anyway? And that's not going to help in the long run. It can really damage relationships. It has impacted a few of mine, and I'm working on it. I'm a deadless. At the end of the day, I'm human. I'm still learning. So realistically, if you ever find yourself in a situation where you're just thinking, oh, they're going to do this again, just stop. Just push that to the side. Go out and just be surprised. That's all. At the end of the day, we're human, guys. And as always, just remember, Rome wasn't built in a day, but it wasn't built sitting still. Take care, guys.